Okay, let's see another piece of the example. And in this part, I want to do the nested if and else, and I'm gonna grab the code from the version 2, and then I'm gonna uncomment this code. So, well, the case is, well, if it is not rainy, I also want to check the temperature. If the temperature is greater than 60, and I'm comfortable with that. And if the temperature is lower than 60, and I would say, even if it's not raining, the temperature is lower than 60 outside, I don't want to do barbecue in a really cold weather. And then how do I do that? Say I create a temperature which is 70 for example. And then I'm gonna say if temperature is greater than 60, and then I'm gonna say can barbecue equals true, and otherwise I'm gonna say can barbecue equals false. Okay, so this is to add another if and else branch inside the if or inside the else. So in this case, well, if it is rainy, well, I can't barbecue. And if it is not rainy, I do have to check another condition. And that condition is, well, if the temperature is greater than 60 and I'm comfortable with standing outside for 1 hour, for example, and otherwise it is really too cold for me, I still don't want to do barbecue. Okay, so if you check this version, and I do want to remind you one thing, which is, you see, the can barbecue variable is not defined anywhere outside, right? So can barbecue has to be defined here, here, and here. So why? Because since we are using the nested if and else, and we have a total of 3 different possible branches, and no matter which branch we are gonna take, we have to make sure that the can barbecue variable has been defined. Okay, so if the rainy it is rainy equals false, and then the temperature is 70, and then I should go here, so I should have a true. Let me run the code and try that. Okay, so good, we got a true. Or if we do a 50, for example, and then it is too cold, and then can barbecue should be a false. So let me run this again, and good, we do have a false. Okay, so this is the logic of if and if else, and then inside of the if and else we plug in another set of if and else. And remember, for the second inner if and else, this part will be considered as part of the else branch, so they belong to this else branch, and so this code has to be indented. So this part of the code, they have to be indented a little bit. Okay, so let's come back to our lecture notes. Well, and for this version, and we do see, well, we know, well, we can plug in the if and else inside another if and else. And how about this code? So we have another piece of the code, and we are trying to decide based on a numerical final score. We decide if you're going to get an A or B or C or D or F. Okay, so how do we do that? If the score is greater or equal to 90, you get an A. And otherwise, here is a nested if and else. And if the score is greater than 80, you will get a B. And otherwise, we check another condition. If the score is greater or equal to 70, you got a C. So this logic is good. Well, there's nothing wrong with the logic of this code. But my question is, how do you like this version of the code? Well, if you ask my opinion, I would say I don't like this code so much. Why? Because of the indentation. Because every time we plug in an if and else into another if and else, what is the cost? The cost is we have to do a further indentation, right? So if we have an if and else inside the if and else, inside the if and else, inside if and else, what are we going to end up with? And we end up with this kind of code. I am not really a big fan of that, because if you have further and further indentation, and this makes the code harder to read. So the question is, how do we make it better? So here is another structure. That is if, else if, else. And in Python, that is really if, elif, and else. Okay, so this is chain structure, and let me explain it to you. So we're going to start from here, and if we check the first condition, if the first condition is true, we take the first statement A branch, and then we finish the whole set of if, elif, and else. Okay, so if the first condition is a false, we check the second condition. If the second condition is true, and then we will go to the elif branch. So in the elif branch, we are going to execute statements B, and then we are going to finish the sequence of if, elif, and else. And otherwise, if the second condition is also a false, we have an else branch. So eventually we will go to the statements C. So why this version could be useful? Think about this code. So just now we have already seen this is this code in the nested if and else version. And how do you like this one? For this one, we are making use of the if, elif, and else. And the cool thing is we can have as many elifs as we want to. So if we come back, and this structure only shows if, elif, and else. So we are checking two conditions, the first condition and then the second condition for the elif, right? And if you want to have multiple chain conditions, you can do that. And the answer is simple. You can do as many elifs as you want to. So the logic is we check the first condition. If the score is greater than 90, and then we got an A. And if the first condition is false, we check the second condition, which is the first elif. We check if the score is greater than 80, and if so, we get a B. And then we move further, and then we check if the score is greater or equal to 70. We check if the score is greater or equal to 60. And eventually, if you get something even lower than 60, you are going to get an F. So personally, I like this version a little bit better because we don't need to deal with the annoying indentations. Okay, so here is another example. So if x equals 3, and then we print x equals 3, and elif, we check another condition, if x equals 2, and then we print x equals 2, and otherwise we are going to say x equals something else. Okay, so if we check this part of the code, again, this is a code offers us two condition checks. By having two condition checks, we can have three possible branches. So the first branch in the if, and then the second branch in the elif, and the third branch in the else. Okay, well, and how about this line of code? Are we gonna have that printed no matter which branch we go? Think about that. So in the if, elif, and else, we are gonna take one and only one pass, right? So if we go to the if and then we don't even bother, we are gonna skip the elif and else. Let me say it again. If we go in the else branch, if we go to the if branch, okay, and then we are going to skip the elif and the else. So why? Let's come back here. So if the first condition is true, we go to the if branch. We execute the statement A. And do we bother to check the second condition? The answer is no, because after we finish the statement A, where do we go? We are going to skip all the remaining part of the elif and else. We will go further down, right? So how about we take the elif branch? So this means, well, the first condition is a false, the second condition is a true, so we execute the statement B. And then what? We are gonna finish the if, elif, and else, right? So this means, well, for this version or this version, we only take one possible pass. And after that, we are going to skip the entire if, elif, and else branch. So we are going to go here. So here for the last line of code, we are going to print this is outside the if, which means so for this line, the last line of the code, it will be executed anyhow, no matter which path we are going to take. Okay, so let's come back to my code very quick. Well, and this version is definitely okay. And then I'm gonna comment this one out. And I want to add a chained condition. Chained. Okay, so well, let me take the rainy and the temperature. So I'm going to do if rainy equals true, and then I'm going to do can barbecue equals false. And then, well, if the rainy is not a true, so it's not rainy, and then I want to do a elif. So elif temperature is greater than 60, and then I'm going to do can barbecue equals true, otherwise I'm gonna do can barbecue equals false. Okay, so I can't spell. Okay, so well, this is kind of the same strategy, but in this case I change it to a chain structure. So the first condition is rainy. If the rainy is true, and then I'm gonna say okay, I can barbecue. And if it's not rainy, and if the rainy is a false, so I'm not going to the first branch, and then I'm gonna check the temperature. If the temperature is greater than 60, and then well, I can barbecue. And otherwise, well, this means the first condition is a false, the rainy is a false. So rainy is not rainy, and then the temperature is greater than 60 is false, so the temperature is lower than 60. So again, I'm not gonna do barbecue. So it doesn't matter if you want to do this version or this version. So for those two versions, it doesn't make too much difference. But if you really have a long chained sequence of the condition to check, and usually if, elif, else is a little bit better than doing the nested structure. And remember the code, we want to decide the final letters. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video for now, and we are going to continue in the next video.